degrees and have experiences that y'all can hear from and learn a little bit more about. And then the best part is you get to ask them questions after they kind of share a little bit about their backgrounds. So just to give them a quick introduction here, give me a second. For those of you who don't know what the Guardian Scholars Program is, the Guardian Scholars Program is a part of the Educational Opportunity and Pathway Programs, or EOPP, in collaboration with the School of Social Work. Launched in the summer of 2005, the Guardian Scholars Program is a comprehensive program tailored to fit the needs of undergraduate students who are current or former foster youth. So before we start the conversation, I just wanted to acknowledge everybody in the room. We have different EOP advisors here, along with the GSP staff. So we'll go around the room and then we'll get started, y'all. Does maybe Kim or Julia want to go first?
Did you introduce yourself yet?
Oh, whoops. Well, my name is Noe Mora. You might remember me from such emails such as EOP's AMA social work. I've been sending y'all a lot of communication, so I just assume that y'all know who I am, but I am the Summer Bridge Coordinator, and so you'll be hearing from me with more events and weekly updates for sure. And some of you already know me as well.
Hi, my name is Julia. I'm one of the EOP advisors. I recognize some of y'all here in this room from my caseload who also get all those emails from me. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. And again, thank you so much for all of you for showing up on a Wednesday night during your summer.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kim. I'm also an EOP advisor. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And it's good to see some of you. I think I recognize some of the names from past events and Summer Bridge as well, I think. So welcome.
And if we can get the Guardian Scholars Programs staff to kind of just briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll get started with the questions.
Sure, I'll go first. Hi, I'm Melanie. I'm the GSP program coordinator. I've been working at GSP for the past 8 years. Woo-hoo. And I'm really excited to be here. Thank you all for coming. We're really excited to share what we do and how we got here. So really feel free to ask a bunch of questions. We're open and we're so excited.
I saw we unmuted at the same time. I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Tiff. I'm one of the case managers with the Guardian Scholars Program. Been with the program for 3 years and love it. And so we're super excited to be here today to just talk more about social work and answer all the questions that you may have.
Hi everyone, my name's Ella, pronouns she, her. I'm the other case manager with the program, so Tiff and I are in the same position with GSP. We not only unmuted ourselves at the same time, we both also started working with GSP at the same time. So we've been with GSP for 3 years. I'm excited to see you all, and yeah, we're all excited to be here.
All right, so we're gonna give 30 more seconds, y'all, so y'all can finish the poll just to get a better idea of who's on the call. If you can't see it, that's okay, but if you should be able to see a poll that's asking you what your current class standing is. And if you're currently a social work major, we'll give it 20 more seconds and then we'll show the results. All right, 10 more seconds, y'all. And for those of you wondering if we're recording, yes, we are. So we'll be able to send you the recording after the call today. I know that sometimes Wi-Fi can be an issue, but okay, I'm going to end the polling. Let's see what we got. All right, so it looks like the majority of you are juniors. We have 2 seniors in the house, a couple freshmen, sophomore. And it looks like not a whole lot of you are social work majors. But that's okay. We're going to talk about that too. And then we're kind of, half of you are for sure trying to apply to your master's degree, and the other half are unsure, and that's okay too, y'all. We're going to talk about those experiences. Oops, I forgot to share, but there you go. All right. So the next thing we want to do is we have some predetermined questions for our panelists. And so we're going to work through those. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the social work major here at SF State and some other requirements. And then we're going to give you all a chance to ask your very own questions, which some of you have submitted the questions, but we'd really appreciate it if you unmuted yourself when the time comes to ask our panelists those questions. But for now, let's get started, y'all. I'm going to choose Melanie to get us kick it off. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, including your personal and educational background, and how long have you worked at SF State and your journey to social work?
Hi, everyone. So I'm Melanie again. You can call me Melly Mel. So my personal journey is not traditional at all into the field of social work. So I didn't know I necessarily wanted to get in the field of social work off the bat. In undergrad, I initially majored in wildlife, fisheries, and conservation biology. I wanted to, feed baby tigers, and I wanted to be a vet for wild animals. So that was my dream. And then I quickly realized I was not good at science. And intuitively, I always loved working with people, and I loved working and helping people, and just working with different kinds of communities. So if there's one piece of advice I would give, is that was an inner voice that I had, but I just didn't know that was a strength of mine or something I could do as a job or a career. And so I feel like once I finally heard that very late in my academic career, probably at the end of my third year, I finally realized I should probably major in something else. And so I ended up majoring in ethnic studies, Latin American studies, and African American studies. And so we'll talk about that more, but really I didn't major in social work, and I didn't realize that until later. And I still got into the social work program through internships and volunteering in undergrad. I realized that was what I was already doing, and something I loved. And I think we'll speak more to this, but I had a little bit of imposter syndrome where I didn't know that I could do the things that I was doing for a career. And I also, I think, didn't feel like I could be strong enough to do those things. Back then when I was in college, I thought like I was very intuitive, or I was very empathic, and I didn't see those things as strengths, but maybe things that were maybe like I was too emotional, or I was too this or too that. And I think once I really embraced those things and saw them as strengths, that I realized that really those were assets, and those were things that I could do to help other people. And really I wanted to be in a healing field. So that's kind of my personal journey in getting into social work, is that I really wanted to work with people to get to their own confidence, their own, to really support people and getting to their own solutions, their own pathways to being the best people they wanted to be, and really guide them into what they wanted to do. So that's a little bit about me and how I got into social work. I actually did my MSW at SF State, and my undergrad at UC Davis. So I'm a Gator, and the MSW program at SF State's really great. I picked SF State because of the at the time they had concentrations, and one of the concentrations they offered was social action and change. And so I really know that SF State is rooted in social justice, and that's why I picked SF State. So that's a little bit about my journey, and I'm really have been grateful to really have had different jobs, and that have really gotten me into different experiences. And I got into this specific job with the Guardian Scholars Program because actually my professor, who's one of the co-founders of GSP, was my professor at my MSW program. So Sonia Lenz-Rashid, she's one of the co-founders. She's a professor in the School of Social Work, and that's where I learned of the Guardian Scholars Program. And I learned of all the amazing work that they did. And before working at GSP, I worked with justice involved young people in San Jose in the FLY program. And I worked with a lot of youth in the criminal justice system or the juvenile justice system. And then a lot of it intersected with foster youth. So I ended up really loving working with young people and really guiding them. And a part of that was also supporting them in their journey and getting into higher education, so if that's something they wanted to do. So I won't ramble on, but that's a little bit about my personal journey.
All right, thanks, Mel. Maybe we can get Tiff to go next.
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Tiff. So yeah, I went into social work. Well, I went to school in college thinking I was going to become a teacher. And so I think I was like, yeah, I'm going to be like an elementary school teacher. I can't do more than third grade math. So third grade is probably the highest I'll ever do. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be a teacher. At the time I went to UC Irvine. And so at the time I went in as a sociology major, and I was like, okay, this is what the plan is. And then I picked up all like these side jobs, like tutoring and working in classrooms. And I think I just ended up being the tutor who never really helped you get your assignments done on time, but like would start asking you more about like, oh, how's your family doing? Like, who are your friends? Like, what do you like to do? And ended up kind of being more interested in, getting to know how you are doing versus like working on this math problem. And so I think that's why I was like, okay, maybe like a teacher role isn't like what I'm really passionate about, but I loved being in schools, and I loved like being able to get to know students from the first day they start to when they graduate. And that timeline and that duration was so like appealing to me, and I really loved seeing growth and progress. And so that's why I was like, okay, how can I still be in schools but not be the one like creating curriculum and having to just teach and lecture all day. And I learned more about like school social work and counseling, and kind of getting into more of that field, because I knew like in my sociology major homework, a lot of it was like people watching. And so I get a lot of homework assignments where professors are like, okay, like go to this setting and like write down notes for 30 minutes of the people that you see and what you observe. And I found that really, really fun and like really interesting, just to like get to know people and learn about relationships and stuff like that. And so I think that's when I started learning more about the field. And I think the biggest thing, and then we're going to talk about later, is internship experience in college. And I think the internship experience is where I learned the most of like who I want to work with, where I want to work. And Julia just said that I sit next to her in the office, and I definitely watch her from time to time, whether she notices or not. I'm kidding. But yeah, that's part of this field, is like there is some interest in people that you probably have to have going into social work. You can totally be like introverted and like, and be a social worker. That's totally doable. But there is some sort of, I think, desire to help people in one way or another. And there's so many different ways to help people. And this field allows you to help people in different ways. But yeah, and then I got my master's at San Jose State, and worked in the school districts in San Francisco. And then I did like medical social work for a little bit at UCSF. But they were always with adolescents and young adults. And so I knew that was the population that I wanted to work with. I loved teens and college students, middle schoolers. Like I love just like, I don't know, maybe 26 and under, or like the part of your life where you're really kind of looking and learning and growing the most. And so, yeah, and then with Guardian Scholars, started working after I got my master's, and love it so much, love the students, and yeah, just happy to be here. I will pass it on to Ella.
Sweet. Thanks, Tiff. Hi, everybody. Okay, let me think and try to make sense of how I got here. I went to UC Berkeley for my undergrad, and I entered as a peace and conflict studies major, and I thought I wanted to do work with like international relations. And then I didn't really enjoy that, but really loved my gender women studies courses, which have some like sociology themes and kind of similar to like also what Mel studied, like with ethnic studies, and really loved that. So chose that major, and was interning at the Gender Equity Resource Center with at UC Berkeley, and doing a lot of kind of sexual violence work. And I had no idea I wanted to go into social work. I don't even think when I still got to my graduate or master's level program, I still barely understood the full like breadth of what social work was. And I was like, I almost don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm really grateful that I'm here. So I kind of fell into it. So I graduated from my undergrad at UC Berkeley, and then I was doing more like community organizing or social justice. I knew I had a really strong passion for social justice and equity, and I was doing some work with like city government and the Homeless Commission in Berkeley, and took on a couple different internships, one with the city of San Francisco around housing and like public housing renovation projects, and then another one in Berkeley, also around housing and homelessness. And then I kind of noticed as I was exploring different job opportunities out of my undergrad that all of the ones that I found really appealing and really interesting required a MSW or had an MSW as a preference. I actually wasn't as interested in doing like direct service or working one-on-one with people. I was more interested in the social work kind of like policy and advocacy. But so in my first year in my grad program, and I'm also a very proud graduate of SF State's social work program. And in my first year, as Tiff mentioned, one of the most impactful or maybe like important experiences is the internship or fieldwork component. And in my first year, I did my internship at a housing program for transitional age youth. So a homeless shelter program in Berkeley for transitional age youth. And I had almost no contact with actual young folks that were staying there. All of my work was more interfacing with city government and doing different kind of like systems work. And then I wanted to really take advantage of my second year internship as an opportunity to gain some skills that I felt like I had a lot of room for growth in, which was working one-on-one with people. So I chose an internship my second year working with foster youth services in San Francisco Unified. And I saw a lot of intersection between young people that were in the housing program that I worked at in Berkeley and their lived experience in the child welfare system. So I felt passionate about working with foster youth. So I worked with foster youth in San Francisco Unified, and then that kind of led me to work with GSP. So after I graduated from San Francisco State, someone sent me the job for GSP and said, I feel like you'd be a really great fit for this. It's everything that you love. And it is, I love it so much. And it's also a testament to leaving yourself open to things not going maybe as you planned or expected, because it's not exactly where I thought I would end up or what I thought my skill set and strengths aligned with. But I absolutely love my job with GSP and love working with students and love working with people one-on-one, and felt like that was actually always kind of more of my like weakness or my area for growth. Yeah, so that's kind of how I ended up here.
All right, y'all. Thanks for sharing. As y'all can see, there's a diversity of experiences just with our three panelists, right? So the next question is, speaking to this, social work is such a broad field of advocacy that can include working in government, education, nonprofits, community-based organizations, mental health, social services, and more. Did you always know that you wanted to be a social worker? Is there a defining moment that you realize, yeah, this is what I'm going to do? And this question is for anybody, for all the panelists, I mean.
I can start with that one. I think I spoke a little bit to this, but I, like Ella said, I had no idea I was going to end up where I am now. I thought I was going to be out in the woods with baby tigers and animals and things. But I think my pivotal moment was, I think I knew that I loved working with people, and I already did the work in my internships. In my undergrad, I did the things that I naturally gravitated towards. I feel like I did because I really felt passionate about it, but I didn't realize that that was something that I could do as a career. So I feel like once I started realizing, like, I think I had to do my own research. I had to see, like, what can I do from the things that I like to do? And I was really passionate about social justice. And I think once I literally Googled social work, and I was like, oh, that you can do that. And it's such a broad field that I was like, wow, this, I could do a lot within this. I think the great thing about social work, which also can be a little overwhelming, is that there's so many populations and things you can do, that I think the beauty of going into social work is also knowing that it's okay to not know what you want to do or what populations you want to work with. So I felt really overwhelmed getting into the program, but I think, like Ella said before, really using the internships while you're in grad school and also in undergrad to really explore what you want to do and what populations you want to work with. Even when I was in in the Masters of Social Work program, I initially wanted to work with survivors of sexual violence, and I was very set on, like, that's what I'm going to do. And then I quickly learned I really liked working with young people, or I loved working with young people, but I wasn't sure if there was other populations I wanted to explore. So I kind of worked with both populations, and I realized I just love working with young people. I've worked with ages from 5 to middle schoolers to elementary school to high school and college. And I realized I just really loved working with college students and really seeing someone in their progression and their growth and having those really big, just like life conversations. But I didn't know that until you kind of test out what you like and what you don't like, and what things, what populate. I think you just have to kind of explore and be open to different things. I mean, sometimes you can think you're really set on one population, and you do an internship and you're like, maybe I want to work in with a different one. So I feel like the key is being open and exploring that, especially with internships. But yeah.
Also, just add that something that I love about the field of social work is the kind of endless possibilities, or how there are social workers in so many different places, and some of them involve working one-on-one with people or working with groups, and others are more management or maybe policy or systems focused. And I know we're going to talk a little bit also about self-care and resilience and burnout, which is something that a lot of people think about when they're entering different fields, and especially social work. And it's exciting to me that maybe you get burned out working with one population or in one specific area, and then you can kind of like weave into a different area. Maybe you need to go more policy or management focus and then come back into working one-on-one with people. So for me, that's something that I love about the field of social work. And I think, I don't know if I have a specific moment when I knew this is what I want to do or this is what I love, but actually for me, it probably happened more when I was actually in grad school and actually doing the work, and it was validating for me. Like, okay, yeah, like this is definitely the field that is a good fit for me and that's right for me. So I even wasn't totally 100% confident while I was in my grad program and was still figuring it out.
Yeah, I think, yeah, just to add, for me, there was a lot of, there wasn't like a moment either. I think there was definitely some feelings of imposter syndrome and like, is this field like for me? Or like, I never in my circles of family or friends, I never knew social workers that I could identify with. And I think a lot of times when I even like talk to people in my circles that I was interested in social work, they're like, oh, like, are you sure you don't want to like go into something else? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, why can't I go into social work? And I think as like I like identify as like an Asian woman who's pretty small in size too, a lot of people would, I think, underestimate just like me going into the field as well. And that's what I just had to deal with. And just like, they're like, oh, don't you want to go into something that's like less traumatic or like less intense, or are you sure you can handle that? And it was a lot of telling myself, well, I really enjoy the work that I'm doing with my internships, and I really like feel really called and loved what I was doing and getting experience in. And listening to that, I think, was what I had to like choose to do, because I didn't really have anybody that I knew was in social work. And so I've heard about it. I heard it from professors and people that I interned with. But yeah, there was nobody really I could relate to going into it, but kind of following like, oh, this is, what you feel like is right for you. You feel like your strengths are, being played out, and you feel like you're feeling like you're making a purpose, and this is where you just feel good. And so I think that's what I had to listen to. It's kind of like listening to, as you're getting these experiences, like, oh, I think I do enjoy this. I think I do appreciate the time that I'm investing in meeting these people in this field. So I guess that's what kind of like solidified it.
For sure, for sure. It sounds like, there's a little bit of research that goes into it, some gut feeling about how you're reacting to some of these experiences. So I feel like it's a good, explanation of how you kind of develop your interest in a certain area. So you have to kind of put yourself out there and ask questions and ask yourself if you're enjoying what you're doing, yo. So thanks for sharing, yo. Okay, the next question is, this is more related to the licensing or like, the advanced degrees, but what is the difference between a master's in social work and a licensed clinical social worker? What factors led to your decision to choose your particular pathways?
I'll take that one. So I'll say that, well, getting your master's in social work gives you, I almost feel like it's the ticket to really being able to work in a lot of different areas. Like we've mentioned before, like there's a lot of different areas you can work in. There's medical social work, there's policy, there's school social work, there's working in nonprofits, there's so many areas. So I feel like I think the baseline of getting your master's is really opening the doors to working in a lot of different fields. I mean, I think now a lot of places might ask for having your master's in social work. And I think, like we've mentioned before, your internships are a crucial piece of that, of like exploring what areas you might want to work in. Your licensing is a process. I have my license currently, and even to get my license, it took me a little bit of time to make that decision, just because getting your license, being a licensed clinical social worker, gives you the opportunity to work in a clinical way with people. You can basically practice therapy with different populations. And so if you want to go more in the clinical route, that gives you more opportunities to do that. For me, there's not a lot of people of color in those roles of having their license and being able to practice therapy. So for me, the decision was really having opportunities for myself, and also giving accessibility to others, really seeing people that look like you in those roles, I think is very important. And so that was a part of my decision. Now I'm not sure if I'm still even in the process of figuring out if I want to really the great thing about having your license is that you can practice therapy, but also it gives you the opportunity to support and mentor other people. So you can be more of in a supervision role where you can support others in getting their licensure. So I think there's different things you can do with your license other than practicing therapy or practicing your clinical skills, but it gives you more opportunities also to make more money, to move up in the field. So I feel like there's different options in getting your license, but I don't know if Tiff and Ella, if you have anything to add to that too, because there's a lot in making that decision as well.
All right, and just a reminder, we are going to provide a resource document after today's session. So, a lot of it is doing your own research, y'all. So we're going to give you the tools to kind of investigate that for yourself and start asking those questions to the program here at SF State. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. This is more related to your line of work now. GSP in particular serves EOP students who identify as former or current foster youth. What do you do in your role as a GSP case manager? And this question is for Tiff.
Well, what do we not do? I think yeah, exactly like Ella said, as a GSP case manager, it is, pretty much a social worker, I feel like does everything. Like on campus for any guardian scholar students who have identified as current or former foster youth, we are like their point person on campus if they need anything and everything. So if you have questions about financial aid or housing or finding a doctor, managing your insurance, if you need to get your driver's license, literally anything and everything about life, that's kind of what we're here for. We meet with our students weekly, bi-weekly. It kind of varies based on what the student wants, but it's kind of like having a consistent, at least person who can kind of support any questions you may have during your time at SF State. And so I think our model is super hands-on in terms of like, we love staying in contact with our students. We love when students come in to just hang out and all of that. So I think our role is really unique for somebody who has their master's in social work. Like with your master's in social work, you can go into school social work and work through K through 12. You can do medical social work and do the hospitals. You can be, working for child protective services, adult protective services. You can be an international social worker. Like there's so many different routes you can go. Ours specifically is with foster youth in higher ed. And so I think Mel, Ella, and I, we all love it. And it's just something so unique about being able to work with college students who are in foster care. And so I think that's something about the role that, we kind of do. Our program does offer additional support, like internships, kind of like internship support, helping you find a job. If you want us to look over your resume, that kind of thing. We also have a strong relationship with housing on campus too. So kind of like this place on campus where you can kind of go to for anything and everything really. And so that's what we really love about it. And that's what our role is. So as an EOP student, you're also always welcome to come say hi to us. We're all in the same office. So when things reopen, we're all connected and, we don't only talk to GSP students. We love EOP students as well. So please always feel free to come ask us questions too.
Oh, I was muted. Sorry about that. Okay, so another question that we have for y'all, and I just wanted to acknowledge that we do see the questions in the chat. And we're gonna get to the Q&A part just in a little bit longer. But as social workers, how do you practice mental resilience and self-care? If you can give us a little bit maybe of like, kind of like the rose and thorn of this type of work and how you practice self-care.
I can start with that one. I feel like, I think Tiff mentioned this earlier, some people can think of social work as very, like, I think some people that aren't familiar, some people might say like, wow, that must be hard. And I would say that it's really rewarding. I think the greatest part of our job is really working with students and working with our populations and really being able to get to know people. I think that's why we get into this work, is that we love working with people. And I think because it's social work, it's very I think I think one crucial piece of really staying in this field and not burning out is really getting to know yourself and what you need to really fill your own cup. I am a broken record when it comes to self-care, and you have to learn ways to fill your own cup, because you can't really support other people until you really learn how to take care of and support yourself. So that, and also knowing that that evolves over time. So I think when I first got into the field, an example is that I would commute to the East Bay, and on my commute on BART, basically I would use that time to really read or listen to music. And on the way back, I would kind of process the day. And some days would be really, really heavy, or things. Sometimes there's crisis. Sometimes there's really great things that happen. I think that's the great thing about this field too, is that you never know what any day is going to look like. It's never the same. And I think that's something I love about the field. And so it's really getting to know what works for you. I mean, in the beginning, I think I probably listened to music and read and did things like that. And now I do a lot more physical things. Like my physical health and mental health are really important for me. So exercising, taking walks, maybe like making time for like friends and family, even like painting, doing artistic, creative things. So I think it's also knowing that those things evolve over time. But for me, it's definitely changed throughout my whole career, but it's definitely really, really important.
I can go next. I wrote a few things down, and a lot of mine are like really similar to Mel, and I echo. And I think like also as staff, we're really supportive of each other in this. And hopefully you, like, if you go into the field of social work, you find folks who are also, and colleagues who are also really supportive of your self-care and taking care of yourself. A couple things I wrote down. One thing that I find really important that's part of my like resilience maybe in this work is remembering my identity and myself outside of work. And because I think in this kind of role, like we're working with people and we love it so much. And it also, like Mel says, like it takes part of you to show up and work with other people. So for me, like strengthening and remembering who I am also outside of work, and my value outside of work, and my worth outside of work. I go to therapy, love therapy, and having my own space to process and work on myself and practice things for my own growth. I think boundaries and having practicing and reevaluating boundaries, especially with work. Yeah, and then there's like the small daily practices that Mel mentioned. For me, that's like doing yoga or reading and decompressing after work on my way home on my commute, staying connected to like friends and family in my life, and all those kinds of things that you do on the regular to fill your cup. Yeah. And like Mel said, like, yeah, the I guess like the rose is, I love this job so much. I love almost like every moment of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I totally agree with both Ella and Mel. Just this field, I think, at least all the people that I've met in this field really love it and really want to be in it. And so I think that's like a huge driving force. And burnout is so real, but being able to like recognize when you're feeling burnt out or super exhausted. I think what's helpful for me is like having dedicated time to talk through how like work feels. And sometimes like work is hard and sometimes it's tiring, and being able to have a space with like your supervisor or your coworkers to like talk about it in a way that's productive and just comforting. I think that is super helpful. So being able to like when you go into your master's program, if you are thinking about going into a master's program, like really rely on your peers and your other classmates. What's cool about a master's program is they're usually smaller, and so you kind of see and recognize and really get to know the people that are in your program with you. And so like really relying on each other. Like I could not have gone through my program without the other people going through the program with me. And so I would say that's like a huge bonus, is like when you are in a master's program, like get to know people. Everybody is pretty much feeling lost in the same exact way. And that's okay. We're all not knowing what we're doing, and that's okay, because you have like a bunch of other people in the same exact boat. So that was, I think, the most comforting part of when it did get hard.
All right. So one more question before we shift gears and start talking a little bit more about the requirements for the social work major here at SF State. This question is for all the panelists. Some of the biggest obstacles that our EOP students face are the lack of academic resources and guidance, as well as financial. What advice do you have for other students considering careers in social work? And what is one of the biggest challenges you had to navigate as you went through your undergrad or your graduate school in social work?
I feel like the biggest thing that was most helpful, or I guess most challenging and also most helpful, was the internship experience. I think like that was when I felt the most inadequate sometimes about the field, like especially when, you know, you're the intern, you don't really know much yet, because your job there is to learn, and that is literally your role, is to not know things and to start to try things in a place where you're supposed to learn. And so I think that going into internship and like getting new experiences, I would say, is definitely remember to keep an open mind and like be really compassionate with yourself, because I think it's really easy to feel like, oh, I don't know how to do it yet, or I'm not doing it right. And that's okay. That's literally what is expected of the intern. And that is totally okay, because by the end of the year, like you will have so much knowledge and like so much more just like experience in the field, and you can kind of tell yourself that you do. I know my professor used to all call us green and very, very like freshly mowed grass, hasn't really gone through much, very like, you know, hopeful and just like very naive almost. And then you kind of really go through it in your internship experience, and then you like learn so much more when you're more well seasoned. So I think definitely like don't be too hard on yourself, but definitely take advantage and take initiative when you're in your master's program. Ask questions, and just like get to know your professors and your internship supervisors really well, because they're the professionals in the field at that time.
I would add to that too, that even when you finish your master's or even your undergrad, you're not going to know what you're doing. You're not going to know exactly what you want to do. Even when I finished my master's, I was like, I still don't know what I want to do. And just knowing that your first job isn't going to be your forever job. It's not going to be like the end all be all of what you do. I think if I could give advice, is that your every job, every experience is just a step, and it's also a step to figuring out what you like and what you don't like. And there's going to be things that you learn along the way, like even like the way you work, or the way supervision, how what kind of supervisors work well with you, or what kind of supervision works well with you. I mean, I think this field is really learning through experience, and also not putting so much pressure on knowing everything. I mean, even in this field now, we don't know everything, and we are transparent with our students that we're not experts in everything, but we'll figure out the answer and guide you in the best way possible. But you know, even now we don't know everything. So just being compassionate with yourself, and knowing that the internships in undergrad and in your graduate programs are really a way to explore what you might want to do. And like Tiff said, I mean, internships, you're not expected to know everything, and you're going, one supervisor told me this, and I was like, because you're just, I think I was really afraid that I would screw something up so much. I would like ruin someone's life, and they're like, you're never going to screw up that bad. And there's always another day that you can work with someone and figure it out. So just know that it's a learning process.
No, I kind of forgot what the question was a little bit.
I can repeat it for you, but it's basically what advice would you give students pursuing careers in social work? But also kind of was a dual question, which is like, what was one of your biggest challenges as you navigated your degree?
Okay, thank you. That's kind of what I thought. Okay, I think this is kind of relevant. I was just going to mention, like, maybe, I guess, finding the program, if you're going to do a master's and a graduate program, to really be honest about what the right fit is for you and finding the program that's right for you. I applied to a few different programs. I got into one that was in Washington, for University of Washington, and I felt a lot of pressure to go because people say certain things about this program, and it was out of state, and but every part of me was not wanting to go and not wanting to leave my community and the life that I had built and the connections that I had built already, like in the field here. And so it was really difficult for me, but very last minute, I trusted myself and I made the decision to go to San Francisco State instead, and accept that and go into that grad program. And I'm so grateful that I made that decision. I would have had like $150,000 of debt from University of Washington. It's like 50,000 plus each year because it's out of state. And I don't have like SF State. I was eligible for a lot more financial aid. So those are all parts of like the decision-making process that are really important. And I also I knew that I wanted to eventually like work in the Bay Area. So it made more sense for me to stay where I had already maybe had connections or knew certain people in the field, and had like just a sense of the community and the place, and knew that I wanted to live here long term, and that I'd just be going to Washington for like a couple of years to do the program and then relocate. So I guess for me, like it's the program itself, and then it's all the other things also, like financial aid, like the community. So just making sure, being honest about what is the best fit for you. Yeah.
All right. So there you have it, y'all. 3 different stories that all lead to a successful journey in social work. So we're going to have time for questions after, but we do want to shift gears and talk a little bit about the social work requirements. And we're going to call on our EOP advisors, Julia and Kim, to guide us through this next portion of the event.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen and then I'm going to pop the resource guide into the chat. So 1 second. This one. Okay. See, I had to Google exactly what LCSW stood for. So we're all learning together, everyone. Okay. And Kim's going to take over and I'll pop the resource guide in the chat.
Cool. So thank you so much to our panelists for sharing your stories. We're going to go a little bit into the academic portion for both the BA in social work and then the Masters of Social Work. We do highly advise to please make an appointment to see your college or major advisor. As EOP academic advisors, we solely advise on general education requirements. We are not social work advisors, just mere mortals. So one place that you can go to is the College of Health and Social Sciences, their website. I do believe it's on the resource guide. So just under the section for students, you'll find that they have their Student Resource Center, the advising page where you can set up an appointment with an advisor. They also have workshops that are listed. You can find ones particularly for majors that are housed under the College of Health and Social Sciences. But yeah, the academic advisors there are really great resources if you plan to pursue a major under their college.
Also, sometimes it can be hard to meet with department advisor. So the College Resource Center, the Student Resource Center through the College of Health and Social Science is a really, really good place to start.
Cool. And another great place to look is going to be the School of Social Work website. So just on their homepage, they do have the upcoming fall 2022 admission updates. I think they're gonna provide links and things like that in September, but they do also provide like the information about academics, what to expect, your admissions requirements, the eligibility requirements, as well as student resources. If you're curious about social work, you don't quite know what it's going to entail, they do have links there for students to take advantage of, to kind of look and provide insight on social work and career outlooks.
So I'm going to talk about the bachelor's in social work, the BASW. So with social work, it is a little bit of a tricky major to get into. With other majors, you can, declare on your student center, get in within a week, right? With social work, because it's technically an impacted major, you do have to go through a separate application process. So it doesn't just require that you take certain prereq courses, but it's actually going to require a whole application packet. So the first thing you want to make sure you know is that this major is incredibly sequenced. So you will actually be part of a cohort. And they only accept students starting for fall semester. So there's no spring admit. And you have to basically apply a year before you would technically start. So if you are a freshman right now, you would want to do all your prereqs, and the earliest you can apply is that beginning of the fall of your sophomore year, right? So ideally you will have to have at least 60 units before you can start the program. So again, sophomore year would kind of be that ideal time. And during which that time you will have to take Psych 200, General Psych, Sociology, Bio 100 without the lab, you don't need the lab, and Econ 102. So these classes can be taken all in the same semester, or you can split them up, but you need to have them done before you start the program. So also, if you don't have 60 units, you cannot start, okay? So if you somehow only have 43 units by the time you ideally want to start, you're not going to be able to get into the program. And if you have more than 96 units, they won't be able to accept you either, just because we do cap at certain units for students to change their major. It's just because we want to make sure you can graduate in a reasonable time. You're not carrying a lot of debt, financial aid reasons, lots of good stuff like that. And your GPA must be at least a 2.0. So for the application package, right? So there is a form you have to fill out. And then you also have to write a personal statement. So if you need help with personal statements, please talk to your advisor. Hello. You can also talk to our Career Services Center. We have a lot of folks on campus that are really, really good with this. It's a chance for you to really talk about your interest in social work and everything you bring, and what you hope to do with social work. You also need a copy of your transcript. Unofficial is accepted, so you don't have to pay money for it. So it has to show that you intend to complete all the prereqs, or you have already completed the prereqs. Again, you can work with your EOP advisor to create an ed plan so we can map it out, right? You will also need a resume. What would be very helpful, it is not required but optional, is a letter of reference from a current or former instructor, okay? And then you will submit this whole entire application package online. Currently, the link is not live because they're not accepting applications yet. I think it will open in September. Last year, because of some of our extensions for transferring to the CSU or applying into the CSU, the deadlines were moved to January this year. I'm not quite sure, but I would anticipate some time between December and January. So again, all their application info should be updated by next month. This is an example of what the social work major would look like. Again, because it's cohorted, you would start in the fall, and it's very, very specific. You would graduate in 2 years from this major. You would complete the major in 2 years. So it shows us here what you would take in each semester, how many units. They have it all planned out for you. Also with social work, they are very specific about their days and times. It's not like your other classes where, you might have Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, some in the morning, some in the afternoon. With social work, they have it all plotted out. So for the BA, all classes are held on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So that's going to be very important how you structure your time.
So moving on to the Master of Social Work program. So the School of Social Work themselves have their own info sessions. So they're Monday nights at 7 p.m. on August 16th and 30th, September 13th and 27th, and October 18th. So that's going to be right around the time that Cal State Apply will open, and you can start to submit your applications for the program. So as part of the application process, you do have to complete the School of Social Work MSW application. There are two concentrations. There's the individuals, families, and groups, and there's the Title IV MSW program, which requires a supplemental application through Cal State Apply. I believe if you apply for the Title IV and you're not selected for that particular program, your application will still be considered for the individuals, families, and groups concentration. So as far as basic requirements for the program, you do need a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution, a 3.0 GPA with an emphasis on the last 60 units. So that's typically related to your major in your junior and senior year, those classes, a resume, a personal statement, 3 references, and volunteer experience is preferred. And the graduate studies at SF State, they do provide some workshops on personal statements. So if you do need assistance with that, you can find the link on the School of Social Work site. So the Title IV Child Welfare Stipend Program. So this is a program that operates at 20 university schools and departments of social work in California. It's specialized to deliver curricular content in public child welfare, and students do receive a stipend. The program will provide a stipend of $18,500 per year for 2 years, a total of $37,000. Applicants must agree upon graduation to work in a county child welfare services agency for a period of 2 years. And if you are interested, again, there's a separate application, a supplemental application through Cal State Apply. And there's actually a particular program coordinator who you can reach out to should you have additional questions. And their information is actually just on the School of Social Work homepage.
We also put it on the resource guide.
Yeah, and I think it's on the resource guide as well. So you can definitely reach out to Lucy Fuentes, and they'll be able to, answer any additional questions that you have. The Pupil Personnel Services Credential, these courses, I believe, are alongside your MSW curriculum. So for students who are interested in working in the public school setting, the current SF State MSW program, students are eligible to apply and complete those course requirements as part of their MSW degree. And this will allow you to work in, like I said, like pre-K through 12 environments, and you'll have those credentials after you graduate. All MSW courses, this is good to be aware of. It's kind of like the Bachelors of Social Work courses. They do have set days. It will be held on most of the duration on Mondays and Tuesdays. So they do advise kind of being aware of that and planning accordingly. Oh, awesome. So yeah, if you have questions about the PPSC program, Tiff and Ella could probably, give some insight on that, more than what I could provide.
The experts, go to the experts.
Yeah.
Remember, mere mortals.
I have a question. Is it question time yet?
In just a bit, or do we want to take the question now?
Yeah, is it related to the MSW?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
I wanted to know, like, in order to get in that program, you have to do the other one first, like the social work program, or is that 2 different programs?
You mean the BA versus the MSW?
Yeah. Yes.
No, you don't have to do both.
Okay.
If you want to major in social work in undergrad, that is totally your choice, but you do not need to have a social work major in order to get into an MSW program?
Oh, okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah,
That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. You don't have to, be social work all the way through. If you majored in sociology, you can still apply for the social work master's program. But yeah, so similar to the Bachelor's of Social Work, the MSW program is also a cohort program. This is a general idea of what you'd be taking in your 2 years at SF State. I do believe if you have an accredited bachelor degree in social work, then they might consider previous classes that you've taken. Those, might count and be waived from the master's program, but then you'd have to take additional courses such as electives and things like that to fill out the unit requirement for your graduate program.
That's why I talk to an advisor.
Yeah, so it's always really good to, especially if you're a junior or senior considering the MSW program, they do have information sessions. If you have questions, they're going to be the experts who can answer all the particulars that you have.
The Zoom info for that is on the website and on the resource guide as well. We want y'all to, get all the information from the people who know it best. We're just here to provide a general direction. So the last thing we want to talk about, so this is a very unique program. So we have what's called the SF State Scholars Program. It's also known as the 4+1. So what this means is if you get accepted into this program, you would be able to complete your bachelor's and your master's in 5 years, give or take. For transfer students, they like to call it the 2+1, but in general, it's known as the 4+1. So you would get your bachelor's in social work, and then your master's would be in gerontology. So gerontology, the focus is on older populations, right? I think like elderly. So here, if you are interested in this particular program, again, what is great about it is not only do you get guidance from faculty advisors, not only do you also get to get 2 degrees while you're here and, not have to pay full graduate school level pricing and tuition and fees, but you would also get really, really valuable experience, right? And so what you would need to get into this program is the timing is very, very important. So there is a particular moment where you do have to apply. So in general, you need to have at least a 3.0 GPA. Again, the focus will be mostly in the last 60 units. And you need to, for this particular social work program, you see that you can start applying kind of towards the end of your junior year into your senior year. So most students start the social work program and then based off of when the deadline is, will apply into this particular 4+1 program. It is competitive, right? But they do also have coordinators. We included all their contact information. Please reach out to them. What will happen is when you meet with the coordinator, they're going to review your academic record. They're going to take a look and make sure, your units are kind of in the right place. It's not like you're 10 units away from graduating. They can't accept you if it's that far along, right? But then once you get the AOK from them, you can fill out the application and you can go through the whole process. And again, it's a really, really cool opportunity. Competitive, but if you know for sure that you want to major in social work, you want to continue in social work, and you want to have a focus in gerontology, this is a really amazing opportunity. No application fee, y'all. You don't have to pay to apply to grad school. And then they don't require the GRE or the GPAT. So this is what the roadmap looks like. You can see you don't really get summers, y'all, so be mindful of that, okay? But they have it planned out pretty well. You would, again, the first 4 years are focused on finishing that bachelor's degree, right? And then starting in the end of your senior year, you would actually be able to do the master's program, be done, and graduate. So you would have 2 graduations. So see here on this map, you can see apply to SF Scholars Program sometime in your junior year. So the last thing, in case you want to make an appointment, we put some important contact information here. So for the Student Resource Center for the College of Health and Social Science. school social work, career services, the DRC, as well as EOP. So if you have any questions, not only about social work, but anything, right? Please make an appointment, please reach out to us. And on the resource guide at the bottom, you'll see all our individual contact information as well.
All right. Well, now we've heard some personal stories and now some also information about potential pathways in social work here at SF State. And now we want to pass the mic over to y'all. So, we saw some questions in the chat, but we really like it if y'all raise your hand and ask the questions to our panelists or to our advisors about anything that's on your mind right now. This is a moment where we want to be in conversation with y'all. What are you thinking about? What do you have questions about? This is your time to shine, y'all. So if you could raise your hand and then we'll call on you to unmute yourself. Or we'll also happily take questions in the chat. Oh, it's Kayla. Okay, let's hear from Kayla. Oh, you have to unmute yourself real quick. Oh, can't hear you. No, we can't hear you. You might want to check your audio settings on your little mic on the lower left-hand corner of your Zoom. That might do it. Try. Oh, there we go.
It was still on my AirPods. So I was wondering, where do you guys find your volunteer and internship to gain experience during your bachelor's? Because I know a lot of the grad programs I've researched, they want you to have experience.
I can start. I did my internship actually on campus at UC Davis. There was a multicultural immersion program, and it was a course and also an internship. So part of the internship was creating workshops on diversity and equity and going into the community and seeing what people wanted to learn more about and going into the dorms and different community groups and doing workshops on multicultural equity, social justice issues. So I just found that, I don't remember how I found it. I think it was maybe through people coming into my class that I think it was a sociology class I was already taking, and they made an announcement that it was a course and you could do an internship, and I just applied and got in that way. So I think that's the main internship I did in undergrad, that I got a lot of experience and and I worked with in that internship, I worked with a lot of people who were therapists or had their LCSW or had their master's in social work. And I kind of learned through that. That's kind of how I also learned more about the field and figured out that that's what I wanted to do. So also, that's how I found my internships. But even say at SF State, there's internships on campus. So sometimes there's fairs. There's also, we have, what's it called? We have help me.
I'm new. I've transferred it, so I have no idea. I'm pretty new.
No, sorry, not you.
I think Julia put it in
college.
The ICCE.
There we go. ICCE. Okay, sorry. I'm blanking. The ICCE. There's opportunities on campus also. And also another way I did it was I did informational interviews. So if there were specific programs that I found interesting or really want to learn more about, I did informational interviews, meaning I just kind of set up I want to learn more about how you got into where you got experience or where you got to where you are today. And sometimes that led into an internship or just learning more about the programs. So that's kind of my personal experience when I was in undergrad.
Yeah, I would say I think most colleges, where I found one of my internships in undergrad was our college had a database of internships, and you just kind of go through them, kind of like a handshakey kind of database, but it was specific toward our college and major. What also helped get experience is like finding a part-time job that is related to social work, because for me, like financially, I was like, well, internships don't really pay. I need to work, but how can I find a job that could still be relatable to my degree? And so like finding jobs that were like related to working with kids or with mental health, and you don't have to be in the position of like, you know, the higher up, the therapist or the clinician or whatever. You don't have to kind of be in that, but some sort of job in that setting was really helpful too, just to get the work experience, to get stuff on your resume, and also, you know, to earn some money too, to help pay for school.
Yeah, I think I also, similarly to Tiff and Mel, some of my experience was on campus through my undergrad. So like with the Gender Equity Resource Center, like I mentioned, and then through that opportunity, I got connected to other opportunities. And one thing I did in my undergrad was I got certified as a rape crisis counselor for Bay Area Women Against Rape. And then I volunteered on the crisis hotline. And if you committed to volunteering on the crisis hotline, your training to become a certified rape crisis counselor was covered, so it was free. With your like 6-month volunteer commitment after. And like Tiff said, like I was also working through undergrad, but that was kind of like, it had less hour like per week commitment. So I was able to do that a few hours a week and then still balance like school and working at my part-time job when I was working like in food service and couldn't necessarily find something where it would translate to like a social work experience or something I could put on my resume. Yeah, so like local, like Mel said, like local orgs, and just even reaching out and seeing, advocating for yourself, like, hey, you taking interns, or can I volunteer with you, to start get like a foot in the door and gain a little experience.
For sure.
Thank you.
I'm going to give the general advice. So I put the career services link, and I know sometimes career services is like, oh, it seems like a generic place to go for information, but our CSLD has a lot of different opportunities for y'all. And I think it starts with scheduling an appointment with a career counselor, and they might have insight of what to do if you're in search of an internship, in search of a job related to the career that you want to. So I highly suggest you start trusting the process in terms of the services that the university provides, and they might link you to something that you never heard about. So I'm just gonna put that out there. Okay, do we have another hand raised? I see Thomas.
Yeah, what's up, y'all? So is the social worker the same thing as a counselor?
That's such a good question. It can be sometimes, depending on that person's role, or so like it depends what kind of counselor you might be talking about. Like sometimes we say counselor, we might mean like therapist, but other times we say counselor, we might mean like academic counselor at a high school. And they actually might have gone through a different kind of program or grad program to be like an academic counselor. Like for example, when I was at a San Francisco Unified High School, the academic counselors, they weren't going through a social work program. They were going through like an academic counseling grad program. So maybe it depends like the kind of counselor that you're talking about or where you're finding that counselor. But like a lot of times when we say counselor, we also are talking about like therapist or mental health professional. And sometimes that person might have an LCSW like Mel talked about. But there's also different kinds of trainings that you can have to become like a mental health counselor. So it was a little bit confusing, and that probably didn't give you much clarity. But if there's like a specific counselor you're thinking of, maybe we could figure out like what their training was or how they got there.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if anyone else wants to add too.
I would-
Answered it really well.
Yeah, I think just to think about it this way, right? Like here at the university, you know, a counselor is more related to like psychological services, and an advisor is more related to like academic services. But in high schools, you know, it's kind of blended. Like there's your counselor for your courses, and they're also kind of supposed to be the person that helps you with your, you know, mental health. But it's kind of understanding what population of people do you want to work with? Do you want to work with students in their academics or students and, you know, their mental health? Definitely something we could talk about or help you explore it if you want to contact us later.
Can
But
I add something?
go for it.
Also, like, I think what's a great thing about social work is that even within your position, you might hold a lot of different hats like we do. So in our roles, sometimes we hold that mental health piece and we act as, therapists / we also help with figuring out housing. We can figure out financial aid. We figure out like relationships, what's going on in your personal life. So there's a lot of things different hats that we hold. And in social work, especially say in case management or in different roles, you might hold a lot of different hats. So a part of your role might be a little bit of counseling, a little bit of, goal setting, a little bit of like literally helping someone with an application or literally helping someone with doing the tasks or goals. So I think that's the beauty of this work, is that you can do a lot of different things with people, because people have a lot of different kinds of needs, and you might help people in a lot of different ways. That's a kind of a general answer, but that's kind of what you do in social work. You do a lot of different things.
Yeah, and that's the question that's on the chat too. But maybe you can give some more examples of y'all's personal experiences in social work jobs that you've held in the past. That's one of the questions in the chat. Now,
Yeah, I feel like Mel said, the field is so broad. So it's kind of like there isn't, it's not like you're going to med school to be a doctor. Well, you can go to get your MSW and you can like be a therapist. You can be a case manager and only do maybe like resource referral, where you're not doing anything mental health, but you're more so working on like, here's resources like you can go to and you kind of refer people out to. You can be like a human services agency social worker and help people work with things like CalWorks or CalFresh or Medi-Cal. You can be a crisis counselor. You can do policy work. You can work, behind the scenes on the policies and legal stuff and advocacy part of it, and not even work with clients themselves. You could be a school counselor also. So it's like, with the degree, you don't have to like go into this one specific job. There's so many different jobs available for the degree. You can work with, older populations, you can work with infants, you can work with adults, you can work with individuals with special needs, you can work with, you can be a teacher if you want to too. You really can do anything that relates to people. And so I think that's what's cool about it, is that like, even with Mel, Ella, and I, we all have different experiences, and we all got to social work having different types of jobs and internships. None of our internships were the same. And so, but we all could still do that internship because that's what the major is. So yeah, I think leaves a lot of room to like try out what you enjoy, and say like you want to be a social worker in a hospital for a few years and you don't like it, you can switch and work at a college campus. And so the main part more so is just like being able to help people and assist and support any needs that people may have. So I guess those would be some maybe like more concrete roles that an MSW can have.
maybe as folks are preparing their question, in the poll that we took earlier, half of the folks were certain that they're going to apply to a graduate program, and the other folks were unsure. And Ella mentioned about finding the right fit, but maybe if y'all could go into why did you decide to pursue the master's, and kind of like what are the experiences you should expect and searching for and applying for a master's program?
I can answer a little bit on that. So I chose to do my master's because, well, I personally felt like I wanted to have more options. After I graduated with my bachelor's, I found that a lot of that it was entry level, a lot of positions, which would be great experience. And I I worked for a year doing a little bit of, I worked with youth and families and transitional housing programming with youth. And I just found like I wanted to have more options to move up in my field. And I felt like having your master's definitely gave me the opportunity to do that. So that was my decision in getting my master's. And like Ella said, I feel like it was important to find the right program because every program has different strengths or different, they might have something different from different programs. So I applied to different ones. But I feel like with SF State at the time, so even the MSW program at SF State has shifted a little bit. During my time, they had more concentrations that you could focus on. And so social action and change was one of the concentrations. And that was, for me, that was a big thing for me that I wanted to go to SF State because of that concentration. And other schools, it was maybe more general, where it was individuals, families, and groups, or more clinical. So sometimes different programs offer different things, or they're more focused on research versus a lot of them are focused. And some programs actually, they pick your internships for you versus some you have the choice of what internships you pick. So I think those are also the decisions. And also I feel like it was important for me to pick to be in a community that I saw myself working in after, because you're doing internships and getting experience in the field in that area, you're making connections and you're networking and building networks that would be helpful after. So I knew I wanted to be in the Bay Area and stay in the Bay Area, and that was also a factor. So I feel like these are all things too. And also, to be real, I had family in the Bay Area and I could crash on their couch and save some money on rent because, financially, it's a struggle to go into your master's, and it's important to be able to afford it. So it's helpful if you have any kind of support or just are able to do that. So that was my reasoning.
I feel like what's really helpful too when applying is to be as organized as you can, especially if you're applying to multiple grad programs, because it's a little bit different than applying to undergrad, where it's not like you do one CSU application and it's all in the system. Every school's grad program has a different application process. There's some things that are similar, like they both ask for a personal statement, but like San Francisco State may ask you to mail in your application and all your documents, like your transcript and personal statement, but San Jose State might have it online and you upload it. And then other deadlines tend to also be different too. So that's the trickier part when applying to grad school. I would say, like, for me, what helped is I made this giant binder and divided it up into like each school I was applying to, and then like what each school needed. Some is like 2 letters of rec, some is 3. So kind of being really organized about it really, really helps. Yeah.
All right. Another question in the chat says, do I need to have a bachelor's degree to apply for a social work master's program, or can I graduate from a different major and apply to a social work master's program?
Yeah, you can definitely graduate with a different major. I don't think out of the 3 of us, I don't think any of us maybe even took a social work class in undergrad. So I was a gender women's studies major, and in my grad program, people were coming from all sorts of different fields. Some were transitioning careers, and maybe they were like in their 40s and have been working in education and were transitioning to do social work. Other folks had studied like psychology in undergrad. But yeah, usually some sort of maybe like psychology or ethnic studies or some sort of field, but not necessarily. So people were coming from, all different majors.
Can I add something to that? So a lot of different major options. You definitely don't have to do your major in social work. And I would say, well, this is from the MSW program here, but I would say also in a lot of different programs, they really want to see experience with people in direct service. And that's I would say, it's a competitive program to get into in most places. And I would say, since we have a relationship with the School of Social Work, that sometimes has been the factor that whether they accept someone or not, because it's so competitive. They want to see people that have some kind of volunteer or work experience with different populations. So I would really recommend that if you're interested to, volunteer, do internships, or work in an after school program part-time, to have some kind of, and like Ella said, lived experience is huge too. I can't underrate that, or not underrate that, emphasize that. It's getting late here on the East Coast. My brain is dwindling. I'm sorry. I can't emphasize that enough, that your lived experience is just as important as your professional or educational experience. A professor day one told us, when we looked at your applications, your lived experience, they had a point system where they gave points depending on, like, say, your GPA or this and that. And they said that your lived experience was just as important as your internships or your GPA or different things that they laid out. So your lived experience, don't be shy in using that as your strengths. Like, those are your lived experience are assets for you, and how you can relate and really connect with the populations that you work with. So that's important too.
All right, I think we have time for maybe one more question before we call it a night, y'all. It's definitely getting late, and we know it's rough out here on a Wednesday night. But does anybody else have one question they'd like to ask? If not, for sure, refer to the reference guide that we provided for you, and then we'll share the contact information as well if you want to reach out to connect with us. But anyone out there have a question or comment?
Hi, I had a question. I was just wondering, like, so when do you guys start? Do you start around like junior year, like really looking into grad schools? Because do you have to apply like almost like a year ahead of time? Or I know it's different for each program, but just curious how you guys navigated that.
Yeah, I would say it usually would be like a year in advance. So like if you wanted to start like this coming fall, you would have probably had to apply this past fall 2021 or 2020. So I would give yourself a year for the whole application process to like apply, submit, and then wait for a response. And it's kind of up to you. For example, like if you're graduating this coming year, this is your last year at state, and you want to start the year after, then I would start applying your last year at state. But you could take time off too. I took a year off before grad school because I couldn't handle applying to grad school and finishing my senior year off. It was too much for me. And so I just took a year off so that, after I graduated, I could take that year to work and fill out applications, and then you're just ready to go back in the year after. So it's kind of up to you. So I've had some friends just jump straight into it, and some people who've waited like, 5-10 years even. Like, it's really based on what you prefer and what you feel like is best for your timing.
Yeah, I took some time off also between undergrad and grad. So I took a few years off, and I needed that time to be able to figure out that what I wanted to do was go back to school. And I needed that time to get the experience I needed to apply to the grad program. And one thing I also loved about the social work program that I'll just add is that there were people from all different ages, all different career paths, all different lived experiences. So some folks were like mid-20s, like just kind of finished undergrad, worked a little bit. Other people were like in their 40s or 50s and had like a career and were planning a career transition, or had hit a ceiling within like their work. And so they wanted to get their master's so they could earn more money and like be eligible for a promotion. So I found that like part of it really awesome. There was people from all different experiences and different timelines.
I think one thing too is that different schools, like some schools have a full-time program, and then other schools have part-time programs too. So I was like in a 2-year full-time program, but I had a friend who was part-time and it took him 3 years for the master's. And then a lot of schools now too are doing online programs. So like USC has an online program that I've heard about. So it's pretty much like what you prefer and you feel like you would want to get out of your experience. Like if you need to work part-time, and you can maybe find a school that has a more flexible school schedule. So yeah, definitely look into like a bunch of different programs and see what you feel like might be a good fit.
Yeah, and I would just add that, getting your master's is a big decision, and I think we all took time off after our undergrad to also figure out if that's for sure what we wanted to do, because it's a lot of time, it's a lot of investment, it's money. And I think we all took that time to figure out what we wanted and also work and explore. I definitely worked and want to make sure it was and build experience. I think you want your application to be competitive. So that was the time to also build my resume. I took a year off also. Yeah, it's whatever's best for you, but there's no rush. But also I would say in COVID times, a lot more programs. I think in the past programs required say like a GRE, and a lot more programs are shifting away from that because tests don't really show how great of a social worker you're going to be. So I'm glad about that. A lot of programs don't require a GRE, and also programs are a little bit more flexible now because of COVID. So that's great too. So it's a good time, but there's no rush. Some people go straight into the program, some people take time off. So I agree with Ella. It was cool to see people from all different walks of life and different ages and different parts of their career.
All right, y'all. So just maybe last final call. I see Kayla maybe wants, do you want to ask something, Kayla? Or you just just want to make sure you're good? All right, y'all. I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us today, especially the GSP family out there. We appreciate you so much, and everyone who stuck with us to the end today. We're going to be hosting more of these. Hopefully, we're going to have one in 2 weeks about higher education. And you'll be hearing from a couple more EOP folks and their experiences in higher education. So keep an eye out on your emails and join us again next time, y'all. You'll be hearing from us very soon with the information, and we appreciate everybody. Have a good night. And we'll stick around just a little bit longer if you'd like.